I've been asked many times, how did you get so involved in the treatment of feelings and emotions? You see, I was never interested in mental health as I was growing up. I just wasn't the kind of boy that said, "Mummy, I want to be a psychiatrist when I grow up." When I graduated from medical school, I didn't have the slightest interest in psychiatry or mental health. I actually became an anesthetist. People, though, couldn't understand why I went into that specialty. Anesthesia had no status. It didn't have its own TV program. They even called us sleep doctors. That didn't sound very exciting to most people. But you probably don't realize that anesthesia is the most godly of all medical specialties. I can prove it to you. In Genesis, what was God's first medical act? He put Adam to sleep. That sounds pretty important to me. It was to Adam. I liked anesthesia because it was the perfect guy specialty. There were lots of machines, knobs, dials, gadgets. It was really technical. It gave me a sense of control over other people, which was perfect for a control freak like me. The patients did what they were told immediately. If I said, "You're going to sleep in 10 seconds, they always did, with no arguments. I didn't even have to talk or listen to them. The problem for me, though, was that I was only in the operating room in the mornings. I had to do general practice in the afternoon. There's a big difference going from the OR to the GP's office. In the afternoons, I had to talk to people and listen to them. I had no control over their behavior, and no one did what they were told. One of the greatest surprises that I learned from my general practice patients was that there were two kinds of pain. I'd been well trained in how to treat physical pain, but no one had told me that there was another kind of pain, emotional pain. Which pain do you think is more severe? Well, just think back to the most painful moment of your life. But don't stay there too long. I don't want to ruin your day. Was it physical, or was it one of these kinds of moments? The vast majority of people say that it's emotional. Which pain do you think is more common? Which one is more prolonged and disabling? Yes, you're right. Emotional pain is by far a more common and disabling condition than physical pain. So when I was seeing a constant stream of people in emotional pain, and many of them were Christians, they didn't know what to do about it. But the bigger problem was that neither did I. In medical school, we never talked about feelings or emotions. As students, we were always given the impression that emotions were just a nuisance that got in the way of productivity. We weren't allowed to have emotions, so we just presumed that they weren't important. So here I was now as a GP, totally unprepared to help people with the most common kind of pain. I became particularly concerned about the number of Christians who were struggling with their emotions. They didn't seem to know where to turn or what to do about it. If we as Christians were supposed to have all the answers to life's most important questions, why then were so many Christians emotionally broken? Many of these people told me that they were too ashamed to admit to their pastors or friends that they were suffering. They presumed that since emotional problems were rarely, if ever, discussed in church, that good Christians obviously would not have such problems. For years, they had just been sweeping the issues under the rug, hoping that they would go away because they're now Christians. I soon realized that if we were going to help all these suffering believers, we had to start being honest and talking about our feelings, even in church. Where do you think our emotions come from? Our emotions come from God. It's part of being made in His image. The purpose of our emotions is to help us with relationships. It makes us want to stick to each other. If we didn't have emotions, we wouldn't be interested in having or maintaining relationships. We'd be like robots. When we have healthy emotions, we want to be in relationship with others. Our feelings, when they are healthy, will keep us in relationships. God wants us to have healthy emotions so we can have healthy relationships. He wants us to have good relationships with each other and particularly with Him. Many of you were taught that God was a cranky old man holding a big stick, just waiting to whack us with it if we stepped out of line. But Jesus told a story to describe to us what God is really like and how He feels about us. In the story of the prodigal son, the wayward boy disgraced the family and finally came home to face his punishment. Here's how the father, representing God, responded in Luke 15:20. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And then later in the passage, the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate." Doesn't this sound like a passionate, loving, and emotional God to you? You see, God is emotional. He's emotional about us. He loves us more than we can imagine. He wants us to have healthy emotions so that we can have loving and exciting relationships, not just with our friends and family, but with Him too. He longs to have a closer relationship with us so we can walk through this life and the next. He's reaching out to hug you today, like the father in the story. Will you accept His love and hug Him back? Remember, God wants you to be emotionally free. I'm Grant Mullen.